Citizen Talks is a podcast series featuring discussions with humanitarians, activists, artists, and changemakers, exploring the global humanitarian issues that shape our society, the world at large. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Citizen Talks. I am your host, Minkailu, and today we are very happy to be joined by Danilo McGarry. He's one of the top 20 AI experts in the world. Danilo, thank you so much for being with us here today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and it's been great being here in Turkey.
So first things first, for the members of our audience who may not be familiar with you and what you do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been in the AI space for 20 years now. I've ran some of the world's largest AI programs. I was head of AI for Citigroup, United Health Group, which is the 5th largest company in America. Not many people know them, even though they're so big.
They like to keep their secrets, you know, the healthcare industry in America.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Then I've helped a lot of governments around the world. I helped set and write a lot of the rules around AI as well in a lot of different countries. I have my own software company called Active Automation, and I travel the world, giving speeches, disseminating knowledge on AI, and then helping companies and governments and individuals learn more about this topic.
So I know a little bit about your background. You're originally from Brazil, from somewhat humble beginnings, as I understand. So how did you go from there to being one of the world's foremost experts in artificial intelligence?
So I grew up in Brazil in the 80s. At that time, zero computers anywhere. Phones didn't come into a lot later as well. And I didn't know any English. And then by the age of 6, my parents decided to make a new life in the UK. We moved to the UK, again, didn't know any English. I used to interact with kids by playing chess. And that made me a really good chess player. I won some competitions. And then, just by, I had this hunger inside of me that, my mother, I really respected my mother. She did wonderful things. And she worked really hard to keep the family going. And, I didn't want to let her down. So I had this in me since I was a really young kid. And then I just tried really hard, right? I started winning scholarships, started to become the best in my class. I was just working really hard. So that was already, I think, an achievement because I had to learn English from scratch. And then I started to get into computers, but always at a friend's house. I would go to a friend's house and then try out the computer when the screen was still green and black. And then by the age of 15, I managed to win my first computer. And then that's it. The love for computers started. I started to build my first company when I was 16, so a year after I got my computer. Started coding a website, which is kind of like an eBay version, to sell things between kids. Later on, I got sold to Jalloh submarine, which was then acquired by eBay. And then because of my background, I started using that money to help people from abusive families to build creches. And then I used that money to go to university. I went to Bath University in the UK. So I managed to pay for all my education by myself, which is really cool. And then it started from there. I started working in banks, and then I started to run these big programs when AI really wasn't a thing at the time.
Yeah, so, for most people, I think they only even paid any attention to AI after the sort of ChatGPT moment, right? That's when it sort of came into the vision of people beyond just sort of the pop culture aspect of it, like, oh yeah, AI is going to happen at some point. So how did you see this, so early, like realize, okay, this is the big thing. It's going to be the big thing. I need to dive into it head first.
So this story is actually really funny. So it came out of necessity and survival. So I just joined a new organization called World Bank of Canada in 2008. And literally 2 weeks after I had joined, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and the whole financial system started to melt around me.
Good timing, yeah.
Really good timing to change jobs. And I remember there was a meeting, for the whole company from the CEO, where the CEO basically said, look, I have to let go at least half of the bank within the next month or two. So at least half of you are not going to have a job. And I remember while he was giving that speech, I started to panic. I was like, what am I going to do? And then I literally went straight home, and I started to put a plan together how I'm going to save the bank as all the other banks around us were collapsing. And one of the answers to that was using automation and AI. And I stayed up the entire night, didn't sleep. I made a really naive presentation about how I'm going to save Royal Bank of Canada. I came in next morning and I looked for the most senior person. At that time it was the CFO. And I literally was knocking on his door every 10 minutes. And he was, he was a Scottish man, a little bit brash. He just tell me to, in a very horrible way, go away.
No.
In nicer English than he used. But I followed him everywhere. I followed him to lunch. I followed him to the toilet. Eventually, he said, "Okay, you've got 10 minutes," and just slammed the door. And at the beginning, I opened my laptop. He was on his phone because the whole world is melting. And then he started to put his phone down. He started to listen, and he was starting to become intrigued in what I was saying. So basically, I was explaining to him how I'm going to save the bank with automation AI. And he said, "Okay, I've made a decision. Your entire team is fired, and you've now got to go and become head of efficiency for Bank of Canada." And I was only 22, 23 at the time. And I was like, well, okay. And he said, "You have no budget and you have no team. So good luck." So I think in his head, he thought, if some miracle happens, great. But this guy's also going, and I have a good reason now.
Right.
And then after a couple of months, I started to work with the credit desk. And RBC at the time was like 112th in the world, balance sheet size. And we went from 112 to 9th in the world. And one of the reasons was because of the algorithms and automations that I put in place to help us get rid of the credit exposure that we had. And that made me director. I became the youngest ever director for Bank of Canada. The bank, I think, is like 130 years old.
Mm.
And then, the week I became director, I actually quit my job.
Right.
So I got into AI in a very strange way. I don't have a computer science background. I learned it as I went, through getting my hands dirty. And then later on, of course, it's very technical courses. I know how to code, do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And for many years, I've ran engineering teams. But it gets to show to people that, you don't have to have a technical background to learn something. You just have to have a love and a passion for it. And if there's a need, especially a survival need, I think that's a really good motivator.
Interesting. So with AI, for me at least, and what I've seen over the past few years, it's, I think, pretty obvious at this point that it's going to permeate every aspect of our lives, especially as it continues to improve, which it is very fast, very rapidly. So what does that look like in your mind on the economic level, the social level, and even the political level?
So one thing first I want to say is, a lot of people keep talking about AI as being something in the future.
Yeah, it's
But
here.
it's been happening
Yeah.
for so long now. If I challenge anyone, yourself as well, on your way here, you had probably used AI multiple times before you had arrived in this situation you are now.
Mm.
And everybody who's listening today, they probably use AI in some way, shape, or form. So AI has been around for a very long time, and it's even influencing us in terms of who we vote for, the things that we buy. It's having a very subtle power in our lives. So anyway, fast forward, one thing that's happening right now is AI is very powerful, but there is going to be, probably the access to AGI within the next 24 months.
24 months.
24 months, yeah. So my team are pretty lucky. They get to see a lot of the products and services 6 to 12 months before it goes to market from a lot of the players. And we're already starting to see super narrow AI. I also deployed several super narrow AIs myself for things like doing hospital scans better than doctors, making logistical decisions better than the logistic managers for ships and things like that. So there is a lot of super narrow AIs already existing today, over 100. And when you start adding a lot of super narrow AIs together, you start collectively coming up with AGI. And there's no clear definition of what AGI is. The World Economic Forum or the UN haven't come up with it yet. But it's basically a system that can do anything a human can do, but better, or a collective of humans. But that's on the software side. Now, there's over 100 companies that have over $100 million in funding to build humanoid technology as well, which is the physical side of things.
Mm.
And when you start combining AGI with the physical form, then we're going to be able to do everything, robots are going to be able to do everything humans can do, but in the physical world as well. And I think a lot of people don't make that connection.
Yeah.
AGI in a computer is great because we do most of our work on computers, but a lot of countries and economies are fixed on, physical economy, right? Things that you build with your hands. So that's two things which are going to combine very soon. They're already starting to combine, but it's going to be very prolific and probably mass scale within the next 5 years. We're going to see robots everywhere.
Yeah.
60% of Amazon's robots in terms of warehousing is, the work's been done by robots today already. That's only going to increase over time. So I see a massive change in jobs coming. There are some jobs definitely are going to disappear. Many, if not every job, is going to get augmented with AI. And then there's a lot of new jobs coming as well. So new economies, new companies are going to be created. They're already started already. So it's going to be a little bit like, the transition when we went from horse transportation to automotive vehicles.
Right.
There was a lot of unrest. About 40% of the world was employed by the horse industry, making shoes for horses, grooming, food, training, etc.
Right.
And they're going to go now into a new era. New types of jobs are going to be created as well.
Yeah.
That happened over over 1 or 2 decades when the automobile was invented, but that's going to be compressed with AI, where these things are going to start happening within 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
It's already started the clock. So I think within 3 years, a lot of companies are going to go bankrupt, the ones that don't adapt AI. And then the ones that do, they're going to end up, taking over, buying the failing companies.
Right.
There's a lot to get into, but basically, the world's going to be a very different place 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And 5 years, it goes in the blink of an eye. It's
Oh,
not
I
a long
know.
time.
If you have children, it goes very fast.
Exactly, yeah.
So I want to actually talk about that because, when I think about AI before this current moment that we're in, and AI in popular culture, everybody thought that initially it was going to wipe out like manual labor jobs, unskilled labor, this kind of thing, factory, production, industrial scale. But the thing that actually seems to have really come first, at least in terms of its, again, permeation in the society, was actually something that could do knowledge work, right? So it can write, it can manage complex tasks, it can make music, right? Things that no one probably assumed was going to happen first. So considering this fact that, to a certain extent, AI can now already do our thinking for us in certain realms, what do you think are the skills that people need to focus on moving forward? Because, I think myself, right? I have a 3-year-old son, and the same way that the current generation that we're in never grew up without knowing cell phones, and that changed entirely the nature of their reality, I guess. My son's never going to grow up without AI. It's going to be a part of his life. He's not going to know a world without it. So in that world, what skills does he need to have? What skills should he have from your perspective?
So as of 2 years ago, just a normal ChatGPT everybody already has an IQ of 150 plus, and in some subjects over 150. But by this summer, with the new models that have already started to come out in the last couple of months, but there's more coming in the summer as well, the IQ of the AI models, which are available to everybody, it's going to be over 250 IQ. So there's a problem there, right? Because we've always been at the top of the food chain. We've always been the most creative creatures on Earth. And for the first time ever, we're starting to become second in command, second in terms of intelligence, creativity, strategy, ability to do things, memory, definitely memory we lose out to AI. So that's what I meant before when I said, companies that adapt are going to do really well because they're going to be able to use this superpower to allow them to advance forward, to fix problems they've never fixed before. And those that don't, they will go bankrupt. So what kind of skills do you need? To be honest, I think it's problem-solving skills. A lot of people talk about having EQ, IQ, but I think the new form of intelligence is AQ, the ability to adapt to situations. One thing that a lot of parents ask me is, what should my kids be learning? But the thing that I always advise is, kids should be starting their own companies. With AI today, you can ask it exactly what to do to start up your company every single step of the way. It will tell you exactly what to do, it will coach you through it. And as more and more work gets automated, the value of employees will go down exponentially as well. So investing in a life where you are going to be an employee, I think is a bad idea. Investing where you are a solopreneur, a company entrepreneur, that's probably the best route for kids and for anybody right now, to be honest, whether you're 10 years old or 50. So the skills of the future are really entrepreneurship, adaptability, trying to fix problems that haven't been fixed before with this new form of intelligence that we have today.
Yeah. The way that I've kind of, I guess, framed it for myself, and someone said this to me once, but I don't know exactly how to do this, was that at this stage, what you need to teach children is agency. That now the tools exist that they can literally create anything. So it's not a question of capacity anymore. It's a question of, do you have the will to actually execute this idea and bring it into fruition? Because if you have that will, you have the system here, you can talk to it, it can iterate, it can help you work through things, it can give you information that you never could have accessed without hours and hours of research previously. But again, how do you teach agency? You know, I guess not let them sit in front of the TV for hours and hours a day or something like that, but it's going to get complicated. It's already complicated to a certain extent.
I think two things will happen. You know, as a species, we adapt. We've built tools over time. We've adapted the world around us. So we have the skill to adapt. So either people will adapt out of force because they have to survive, a little bit like how I did, or they're going to adapt out of influence, right? If you see a lot of your friends setting up companies and they're only 12 years old, you know, you're going to end up saying, well, why can't I do that? And you ask for tips, etc. But there's always going to be a group of people that have the wrong attitude. You know, the other day I was interviewing someone as well, and I was asking them, oh, what do you think about AI? I was just on the street asking questions.
Yeah.
And one person really struck a chord with me. It was a lady that works in fashion, and she dresses, you know, A-list celebrities for red carpet events.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, this person has to be very creative, you know, very forward-thinking to do this job. And the attitude that that person had was really, look, I hate AI, I don't trust it. And I said, well, have you ever tried it? What have you done with it? I've never tried it, but I don't like it and I don't trust it.
Yeah.
And that reminded me, you know, because a lot of people are using ChatGPT, they're pro AI today. But that reminded me, you know, the beginning when I was doing this, a lot of people were very against AI, they don't trust it. And it's just a lot of misconception, a lot of knowledge that people just don't have, a lot of ignorance around the topic. And if people, of course, stay in that lane,
Yeah.
you know, they will pay a price for it later when the world is changing around them. It's going to be, you know, very late for them to change at that point.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just the right attitude, I think, goes a long way when it comes to learning anything, but especially when it comes to AI.
So for a person like that, what's one sort of AI system, someone who's not completely unfamiliar with AI, they maybe never use it, maybe they have this attitude, like, I don't like it. In your mind, what's one system that you think they should be using now, that they should be implementing in their lives now, that they can implement in their lives today, that will be of benefit to them, that if they don't do this and start figuring out how it works, they're going to be at a disadvantage like a year from now? What would your recommendation be to someone like that?
Well, before you even touch the tools, there's two things that you need to know. So when it comes to trusting AI, you know, look at all your emails. It's either probably in Microsoft, in Apple, or in Google, right? And you trust your whole life of emails to a company. And you trust it's being kept secure. Your OneDrives, your Apple Cloud systems, there's a lot of information and photos and videos there, but yet you trust those companies. It's the same thing with AI companies. They use the same cloud infrastructure systems to keep your data safe. So there isn't this thing of, you know, I trust AI, I don't trust AI. It's exactly the same infrastructure as before, except we need more of it and we need more compute. That's all it is, the difference.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Second thing is, you cannot say you dislike something or you don't trust it if you've never tried it before. You know, that's pure ignorance, in my opinion. So the best thing is go to ChatGPT, go to Claude, go to Perplexity. Use all these available tools which are free to use. Once you start using it, you'll see that there are limitations from the free version. And you cannot judge the tool by the free version. Obviously it's free, it's supposed to just to give you a glimpse of what it can do. But you know, make an investment to pay for it. If you have to share the subscription with a couple of friends, you know, if you cannot afford it, that's fine. But when the paid version comes on, you start seeing things like memory. It starts to remember the things you've talked about before. It does slightly more deeper research. So I think it's important for you to go up in terms of knowledge by trying things and getting your hands dirty. And once you've tried all the tools, then, you know, for everyday life topics, you'll see how it's very useful actually. And then the next step you should do is try to integrate it into other tools. So use things like Zapier and Make.com, where you start to automate tasks end to end, or at least a piece of a task. So let's say if you write a newsletter, you know, there's a way to get ChatGPT to find the information for you from the news from the last 2 days, puts it into a Google Sheet, and then reorganize it into a certain template, and then emails it out with your email marketing tool. There are ways to do that with Zapier and Make.com. And once you reach that level, then you should start going to the open source models, probably on Hugging Face or Llama, and there's many others. But Hugging Face has most of the open source models today. And then start actually installing these models on your computer, tweaking them, again, integrating them into other tools. Then you start, it's just levels of knowledge. And once you gain that knowledge, you start doing more and more interesting things with these tools, where you get to a point where you've built a whole company around it.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
So something that you mentioned that I want to ask about, which is the energy infrastructure that's going to be required for this at scale. And you're obviously investing in a lot of different businesses, and so when you're investing in AI, you must also consider the infrastructure that's going to be necessary around it. So how is that going to look in terms of how our society's infrastructure, energy infrastructure specifically, is going to change? Because, for example, in the United States, it's quite old, it's quite dilapidated, it's quite inefficient, right? But does AI necessitate a massive overhaul that changes the nature of our relationship with energy? Are we still going to be trying to burn fossil fuels to make this work? Are we going to forcibly be pushed towards more innovative advancements in energy, nuclear? Most people in Europe seem to be reversing in nuclear right now. Is that going to last? Can it last with this explosion of requirement, this explosion of need that's definitely going to happen with AI?
So I prompt so much that I started to, because every time you prompt is 10 or 20 searches, equivalent of Google. And my team and I, we use it so much that I ended up buying a renewable energy company, a solar company, to offset my carbon footprint.
Just,
because
so I can use my computer more.
Yeah, it's 'cause, I think everybody using AI should be either installing solar panels on their roof or doing something to offset, right? Because there's always something everybody can do, no matter how much money or investment you have. So that's what I've done. It's called Certified Renewables. They're doing a lot of great work in the UK, and we're going to expand to other countries as well. So in terms of energy, so every country has a different energy problem. So Brazil, for instance, 60% of our energy is hydropower. We're very lucky to have a lot of dams that we've built. Whereas in Saudi, most of the energy comes from oil and gas.
Right.
And now is a lot of solar investments started to come on as well. So every country has their own different energy problems that they have to plug in. And they will do that. One thing I've noticed as well is Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they've started to build their own nuclear reactors, like mini modular reactors.
Really?
Yeah, to power the data centers that they're building. So a lot of the energy needs are going to be localized, because like you mentioned, the infrastructure is not able to cope with this much demand. So they have to localize the energy source next to the data centers. And that's quite normal now, that's happening. So while every country and every company is solving their own energy problems in different ways, and it's very solvable, this is not going to be there's been, Eric Schmidt, I think, has made a huge mistake. He's the ex-CEO of Google, by saying that AI is going to use 90% of the world's energy. I think it's a massive overstatement, and it's clickbait. A lot of these data centers are getting their source localized. The other thing that's happening as well is a lot of the algorithms are getting more efficient over time. So you'll see the energy consumption of these algorithms going down exponentially every 6 months. So while we're fitting new energy sources in, the energy consumption per prompt is going down. So there will come a moment in a couple of years where there is an equalizer, where AI is using less energy, but we've supplied the world with so much more energy that we actually are able to cope up with demand. There might be 1 or 2 instances where there's a blackout because we haven't got that right. But it is going to be okay. This is a massive clickbait exaggeration that the world's going to not have enough energy for AI.
Okay. So moving forward to the sort of broader long-term impacts of AI on our society. Again, pop culture, right? You've got the utopian vision of the future, absolute abundance, the elimination of need, want from the world, just generally everyone having everything they could ever desire to have and being allowed to flourish in creative pursuits and other kinds of things, something sort of maybe unique to the human condition. And then you have the dystopian vision of the future where AI decides it doesn't like us and it wants to kill all of us, or we become enslaved by a tyrannical government or something of this nature using the tools, these AI tools against us. In your mind, like if you are really, really realistic and honest with yourself about what you see as the most likely path that we're going to take long term with AI, which way do you think we're going to go?
So I've been very good with my predictions the last 10 years. I usually get them right.
Yeah.
And there's a nickname that has started for me called Mystic Dan, which I don't like. Makes me look a little bit mysterious.
Hey man, whatever works.
There is 3 cycles that we're going to go through in the next 30 years. And I'm pretty clear on those things.
Okay.
So the next 10 years is going to be a lot of pain. I think the world unemployment will reach 20% at some point, which is, even during COVID, it didn't reach that level. It reached about 15, 16%. So as we go through this transition, a lot of companies going bankrupt, other companies who are using AI dominating, disparity in wealth is going to get worse. And the world's going to become a very difficult place. A lot of civil unrest, governments not being able to cope. And with the government deficits that we have today, the interest payments outpacing, the spend on defense or education, a lot of things are going to start to collapse. And we're seeing a lot of fights between the dollar being the dominant currency.
Right.
So a lot of geopolitics is going to play in this as well. So there's going to be a lot of pain, I think, in the next 10 years. For a lot of people, for some people it's going to be absolutely great because they're going to make the most amount of money. And then we're going to go through a cycle where actually the economic order that we have today doesn't work anymore. Because don't forget, we have 3D printers which are getting better and better at building houses now. They're making organs. We have AGI at that point. We have quantum computing. We're going to have great advances in technology. So why would somebody go to a shop to buy anything anymore if they can just make it in their house?
Yeah.
If you want a new shoe, you just print it. If you want to build a new house, your humanoid can make it. So this economy of we work, we spend, companies pay tax, the economy goes round and round, that's going to come to a point where it's going to collapse. And then we're going to go through another cycle, which is a third one, probably 30 years from now, where everything we ever wanted can be made at the click of a button. Material things no longer have any value. And then we're going to start questioning, okay, what are we doing in life? What's our purpose as humans? Because we've grown into this, horrible state of just consuming things and acquiring things and command and conquer. And of course, we hopefully spend some time with loved ones and doing all those lovely things that humans do. But there's going to come a point where we're going to be asking the question, why are we here? We have all of this, all diseases are curable, energy sources are limited. What can we do? So that existential question after 30 years will come, where what are we supposed to be doing? Are we supposed to be multiplanetary species? Are we supposed to be creating something? So that existential question will come in a while. So there's 3 cycles: pain and suffering and adjustment. World economic order has to change, and this kind of click of a button consumerism will come in. And then, what are we meant to be doing as humans?
Okay, I appreciate the roadmap. It'll guide me moving forward. We are coming to the end of our time, so we're going to have to wrap it up here. But before we go, I'd like to ask if you have any final words that you want to leave our audience members with, something that's important that you think that they know.
One thing that I try to do is spread positivity. I think, like Rockefeller said, everything can be solved with action. If you just sit around and worry about things, it's not going to help in any way. So I think everybody should focus on their sphere of influence. Anything that's outside of your control, literally delete it from your mind, because it just builds anxiety, because you can't do anything about it. So I know AI can be a scary topic, but there's also a lot of opportunities and excitement around AI and new things that you could be doing. So my advice is look at your sphere of influence. What are the things that you are responsible for? Is it your family, your education, the places you go, etc.? And then look at how that's going to change and how you can make that a better version with AI. And then everything else outside it, literally delete it, don't discuss it. For instance, I don't discuss politics. I have very little influence on what countries do, and unless it's to do with AI. And I hardly ever talk about politics. So I think people should do the same. Try to turn this into a positive topic. You can start learning new things you never learned before, and you can grow as a person, and you can make a better contribution to the world that way, instead of just swimming in deep anxiety about things you cannot control. So that's one way I think people should look at it in a positive light, but also manage their expectations and anxiety by just looking at the sphere of influence and just focus on that.
Okay, great. And if they want to connect with you, where can they find more about you, about what you're working on, follow along with your activities?
So I've got a podcast where I'm interviewing people from all over the world, and they're giving their own views about AI. So it's called It's All About AI. And also LinkedIn, Instagram, it's AI McGarry is the handle.
Okay. Well, Danilo, thank you so much for being with us here today. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And for all of our listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of Citizen Talks, and we will see you next time.